It was a lavish trip back to Canada for 8 women who traveled to the Middle East to join ISIS. Global News has learned Ottawa spent close to $200,000 repatriating them, along with their children, from a detention camp in Syria. The premium price tag, due in part to business class flights, hefty room service charges, and high-dollar transactions at a hotel gift shop. Many of the women are now facing terrorism charges. Global's Stewart Bell has been digging into this story for us and joins us now to discuss what exactly was uncovered. So, Stewart, let's start at the beginning. Who are these women and how did they end up in the Middle East and then back in Canada?
Well, after ISIS was formed, 2014, around that time, there were a number of Canadians that left Canada to go to participate with ISIS, to live under ISIS territory, in some cases to fight for ISIS. And a bunch of them were women. There were a group of women that left, some with their husbands, some married over there. And as ISIS collapsed, especially around 2019, a bunch of these women were captured by Kurdish forces. And eventually they were taken to a camp in northeast Syria where they stayed for a number of years. And eventually the Canadian government decided to repatriate them. There was about 8 women and their children as well. So they were brought back to Canada in 2 waves in 2022 and 2023. They were flown, taken out of Syria, out of the camp, and flown back to Montreal.
Okay, and if you can break down some of the expenses for us that you found. How did Canadian officials end up spending at least $170,000 on those return journeys?
Well, that's a good question. The expense reports show that there were quite a number of charges. There was a Marriott hotel in Montreal that was used as kind of a staging point for the women, and these costs also include the costs of the government staff that were brought in to repatriate them. And so there were rooms, there were quite a lot of room charges. There were charges for wine and junk food, room service meals, that kind of stuff. So it all added up pretty quickly. In some cases, it looks like the government also flew in relatives of some of the women from places like Edmonton to receive them. So there was a lot of costs that accumulated. This isn't even the total costs as far as we understand, because the government is still consulting on some of the costs before they release them to us.
Yeah, and you mentioned it was quick to add up all of this stuff, but it was not quick to get this information. It took about 2 years, right, from the time of requesting the documents to actually getting that data. So take us through that process. And what have you heard from Global Affairs?
Yeah, so when the last of the women returned to Canada in July of 2023, we filed a request in the Access Information Act for details of these costs. What did they spend? What did they spend it on? And it took a long time and a lot of fighting, actually, for us to convince Global Affairs to release this information. They seem to have just not made it a priority. But eventually, we did receive some of the documents last week. And at the same time, they said they were withholding about 50 pages of documents because they were still consulting with the foreign government about whether to release them. So we have some of them. The Global Affairs Canada, we asked them a number of questions about, including why it took so long to release these documents, but also, how do they rationalize spending so much money on this issue? How could they rationalize the spending of government money on alcohol and junk food? And they declined to comment.
Okay, so not getting a full picture there just yet. And Stewart, I want to mention you also did speak to a group formed by families of Canadians killed in the September 11th terrorist attacks. How did they respond to this investigation?
Well, they were not pleased. There are a number of Canadians who have been victims of terrorism, either personally or they've lost their relatives. And some of them have to participate, to just experience or to be there for the court proceedings for the people accused of killing their loved ones. They've had to pay out of pocket. So they were saying that it's not fair that the government should spend so lavishly on returning women and their families who participate in an ISIS when victims are left kind of to pay out of pocket for their own expenses.
Okay, that is our Stewart Bell with more details on this global news investigation. Thanks for this, Stewart.
Thank you.